Hi, my name is Jim Martinez, and this is the slideshow that I presented at the Provost Discovery Luncheon. I thought I would make a recording for folks who were interested but could not attend, and so I will just talk through the slides briefly and bring out the highlights that I think are the important takeaways of this presentation. The focus of the presentation today is interdisciplinary service learning with public schools. And I want to bring out what are the things that I thought were important in creating an interdisciplinary service learning project and what service learning looks like at NYIT with the public schools that we are working with. So first I want to cover our theoretical framework, what I consider to be the interdisciplinary activity of the project, the history of the project with our Harlem school partner, and then the expansion of that project with the Queens District 28 schools that we are now working with, and what I look at and think of in terms of the interdisciplinary growth of the project itself. What I find in creating and working with people in an interdisciplinary project is that you're representing multiple points of view. And so this can be challenging, not only to the existing hierarchies, but to the points of view that people are representing. And so what's important, I think, is that we're not trying to represent an engineering point of view in the project or an education point of view in the project, but create a unified point of view out of the multiple points of view. What happens is that we are working on something that is brand new, not something that is a new take on an old idea, but something that is genuinely a new activity for all the participants. And in that, we have to embrace uncertainty and be willing to seize the initiative when it presents itself and recognize what those opportunities might be. And they might not always be what we expect. So in very sort of plain and simple terms, what I look for and what I try to create in the learning environments and in the projects that we participate in are social activity, collaborative groups, opportunities for distributed leadership to emerge. So although this project has some recognized leaders, what happens and what I expect to happen within this framework is that leadership will emerge in different and unexpected places. Play, performance, and improvisation are part of my pedagogical toolkit, and they are the things that I do intentionally in all the learning and research and service environments that I work in. There's some element of play or performance that I bring to those environments. Risk-taking is another aspect. People are taking risks in these interdisciplinary environments. They're stepping out of their own comfort zones. And so play, performance, improvisation all work to create an environment where people can take bigger risks. And in all the things that we do, relationships to each other, to the content matter, our historical relationships, who we are coming into the project, who we are becoming in the project, and what we are doing together are all the things that I look at in terms of what are these relationships, how are they developing, and how do they relate to what we are creating in the communities. So there are some real theoretical folks in the background here, and so Vygotsky, Wittgenstein, Marx, and the interpretation synthesis of those theorists, particularly Newman and Holtzman's take on those things, is what I follow and is what I bring to the table in terms of my framework. I don't always talk about the more sort of academic aspects of the activity that I'm engaging people in, but they are back there and available for us to talk about in the more academic and scholarly sense. What I worry about, what my concerns are sort of creating a developmental approach to learning as opposed to the knowledge acquisition approach to learning that dominates kind of what we do in educational institutions. I'm concerned with the cognitive and social and emotional growth of students, and that really comes out in the interdisciplinary service learning projects where students are confronted with real-world situations that challenge them socially and emotionally. These are new situations for them, and so we expect or should be prepared to support, their confusion, their concerns, their uncertainty. We're also interested in creating an inclusive and safe environment for people. A lot of times on interdisciplinary projects, people will say, well, it's very inclusive. We've got different people in the room, and what those differences are may be not so different. We're including people who are a lot like us, all engineers, for example, or people who are all predisposed to being engineers. What we mean by heterogeneous environment, that we are mixed on every level and in every dimension we can imagine. Critical reflection is what we're doing when we're asking ourselves what we're doing. Did we create something new? Did we find a new way of doing something? Did we do something new with someone new? Did we engage in an activity that was maybe not new for someone else, but new for me? All these questions are the right questions to be asking in the critical reflection portion of any service learning project and any interdisciplinary project. Are we getting someplace new, or are we covering old and familiar ground? Service learning as a pedagogy, as a kind of experiential learning, asks students to bring what they have to offer, their skills, their knowledge, and it values what students have, even though they may not have become engineers yet. They are in the process of becoming engineers, and so what they have to offer may be significant to communities and particularly to public school settings. It's very important that people self-select into this activity, that there are choices that are available. You don't ever want to create a situation where people or students feel that they have been coerced into participating. Civic engagement, developing new perspectives on what goes on and what our roles are in society. This is very important. Asking the question, what can we give in a culture that is, sort of geared around consumerism and getting, and I'm participating because I'm promoting my own skill set or agenda. These are important things to add into a student's experience, is that they do have something to offer, they can give something, and then the question becomes, what? And our interventions are responses to limitations. I don't like the idea that what we are doing is addressing the deficits in the community. I think that's a backwards way of looking at things. There are limitations, and so limitations provide the opportunity to be creative. And so how are our interventions a response to limitations and creating new opportunities for people to grow, develop, do something new in their communities? So the challenge that was presented when I started this project with PS 241, which is the school in Harlem, is that they wanted children to think like engineers, scientists, technologists, mathematicians. And that was very interesting to me because elementary school teachers are not trained to be those things. and therefore, from my perspective, they don't think like technologists or engineers, or scientists, and yet this is what they are trying to do: teach children to think that way. My solution or my idea is that we bring the practices that we want children to acquire into the public school, into the elementary school, and that in order to do this, we have to be able to do this sustainably. So I walked around looking for help. I realized that what I wanted to do was to bring engineering students into a public school. And I didn't know how to do that, so I talked to the assistant provost, Fran. She introduced me to Amy Bravo, who was an assistant dean in the career services. Amy looked at my work, my theoretical framework, and my idea, and she said, "You want to do service learning?" And she introduced me to other faculty in the School of Engineering. I then introduced Amy Bravo to Ellen Darensberg, who was the magnet school specialist who I was working with at PS 241, and really the champion in that school of STEM education and learning. During our project, we had 23 students in the school working and relating and reacting to what they found. And one of the students, Raphael, introduced Ellen to the National Society of Black Engineers, which wound up 2 years later being quite a remarkable introduction in terms of the results it produced. So our initial interdisciplinary team included myself, Amy, and Ellen. We championed the project, each from our different perspectives, and we were able to organize our supporters, which are immediate deans and department chairs, and some faculty, Richard Myers, to sort of let's try this. Let's do this service learning course in this public school and see what happens. So we were always organizing the group. How do we organize the students to be in the building? How do we organize the faculty to sort of teach the course? What are we doing together? And how are we doing this in a way that's sustainable? And how are we doing this in a way that we can sustain our own, continuing agreement to keep doing this, even when it's challenging? So this is how I organized the PS 241 pilot in Harlem. I had 23 students. I organized them into 3 teams. My background is as a technology manager in corporate settings, and given that this was a career discovery course for freshmen in the technical program or with technical interest, I thought that being the project manager and organizing them into project teams was a really good way to organize them in terms of their own field experience and how this really works in the corporate world. Our goal was, Amy created the idea for me that we could present this publicly at our auditorium on Broadway. And so the goal for the 10-week engagement in the public school was, what are we going to present at this event where we're going to invite the public to, everybody at the school, other faculty at the NYIT. Our funding level was $0 to $300. We each went to our deans, Amy and I, and asked for money to fund student travel from campus to the school. So this is what it starts to look like when the students are in the classroom. So our classroom team sat with students at desks and engaged in the activities that teachers had created for them. That's Raphael, and we had the rare occasion where students were able to bring an activity idea to the classroom. And so here you see that we may be learning about stability and structures with some blocks. And here the activity turns into a math activity in terms of the engaged math learning experience. We're measuring how high our tower is. And here we have smiles. And this is why I think this project is important, that children are engaged in a learning activity. This is their teacher, in the foreground there, Raphael sort of looking on as smiles break out all over the room. I think this is an extraordinary event in a school. Some of our undergraduates took to fixing the computer, so the tech team took care of this. And so a lot of the resistance that teachers have to using technology in the classroom is about broken equipment. And so our tech team took care of that problem. This is one of my favorite pictures. So this new kind of interaction, this young man in the red sweater is on stage. He has got a camera in his face and he's being interviewed by two young adults. This is an extraordinary event in a school day for him. He is the center of attention. It's about him. And he has something that's important to say. Why do we know that? Well, because they've got a camera. And we know that in our culture, people with important things to say get cameras in their faces. And this is yet a different platform for our students at NYIT. They are documenting the experience. They are the reporters. This is a new activity for them. They are charged with sort of bringing this work out to the public. And so they have an opportunity to be other than who they usually are, which is simply students. Now they are the documentarians and recorders of this experience for the entire team. Here we have Family Night, which our students got involved in, and Family Night is all about creating these STEM activities, and so our students participated in that with student families, elementary students' families, and this takes place, I think, in the lunchroom in the public school. So this is our AOB event, and we had our NYIT undergraduate students on stage for the first time for many of them, with an audience full of faculty and 100 elementary school students talking about our work together on a panel. And so here is another opportunity to present our students with a stage for their performances that are completely new. Talking about the work in a different environment that they never expected to be in. And they're talking about their own growth and how they change their ideas about what happens in public schools, how things happen in public schools, and what their roles could be in public schools. So we're on stage there. I'm there with a couple of the teachers and for the students. So when people talk about impact, we're talking about a small number of people in this case, 23 undergraduate students, 100 elementary school students, some faculty, and some teachers at the Harlem School. But impact is not always about the numbers. I am told that children at that elementary school 2 years later are still wearing their NYIT t-shirts, and I think it represents something that they came out of Harlem into Midtown Manhattan, into a big fancy building, and sat in a big fancy auditorium and had the experiences that they had, and that what was presented was about them. So leadership did emerge. The undergraduate students who got up on the stage and talked about their experiences, they stepped up. That was new for them. They gained new insights. We who ran this project as faculty and staff learned a lot about this kind of project as well. NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, continued to talk with Ellen Darensburg, and when Ellen moved into the new service, into her new job in the Queens schools, she brought NSBE along with them. And what they created was an after-school program for the 3 new schools in Queens, and that is going on right now. So some reflections. Ellen's reflection I think, is that she saw the extra pairs of hands, and that those extra pairs of hands in the classroom enabled small group instruction, enabled more technology access, and created the possibility that children were getting more support in these STEM learning activities that were being designed. Our students had the experience that they were helping to increase engagement in school. And I think that in a lot of ways, they recommend that other people do the additional service learning projects because they had a good time, they were more engaged, and they had opportunities to do things that they had never done before. In this reflection, I found it very interesting because the line at the end of the reflection, or at least at the end of this quote, they were always eager to learn, that is that student's perspective. And that perspective comes about through her experience. What the student doesn't realize is that the student was part of creating the experience of being eager to learn. I think this is of significance because we're creating learning environments. And so if you create a learning environment and the kids who are in hard situations in Harlem or in Jamaica, Queens, and you're experiencing them as eager, they're eager because you are there. They are not eager when you are not there. Anyone who's a New York City public school teacher knows that children are not always eager to learn in public schools. And so this is a transformation that is significant, even though this student can't see it for herself. Others around this student can report and sort of provide context for what the experience is. So, more interdisciplinary activity, Ellen introduces Sharon Rosen to our project. Sharon Rosen attended the AOB event. Sharon Rosen happens to be one of the project managers in the New York City Department of Education. And her role is to get funding for magnet schools. Magnet schools are specialized schools that get special funding to develop curriculum that is specific, in this case, to a magnet theme that happens to be STEM education. Because of our project and the pilot and what Sharon saw, she invited NYIT to submit letters of support to her next round of funding. And we were approved for that funding. So NYIT now provides service to these 3 schools, and our funding goes directly back into the schools in terms of professional development and our service learning programs and all these other things that we are trying to do together as community partners. So that also generated a research project for me. So I will be studying what our students are coming away with from their participation. And it is now impacting on about 1,500 students and many more faculty members, both at their site and at our site. So this is what the team looks like now. So we've definitely grown, and with that growth comes more activity. I think that what's important going forward is that we stick to our fundamental principles as the project goes, and that as people come to the project offering what they have to offer, that we're agreeing that what we want to do is create better learning environments for everyone. I think this is crucial. This is the fundamental activity. And that we are organizing our teaching institutions to teach people how to give, both in the elementary school and in our higher ed institution. This is how we sort of break out of the old notions and create opportunities for new things to happen. And so this is the end of the presentation. I guess on the agenda are broadening support for the project, both financially and otherwise, engaging faculty, and their implications for engaging faculty from on the institutional level. There are many more benefits and opportunities to talk about. I think that one of the things that I can and will address for folks are learning outcomes. Clearly, there are learning outcomes that are happening that are related to soft skills that all of our students need. Collaborating, communicating, which were real struggles for our students. And then, being able to, as faculty, engage in new pedagogies. It's not easy. And so how do we support faculty in terms of their training to do service learning as a pedagogy or any other kind of pedagogy that's part of the suite of experiential learning pedagogies. I'll stop here, and I'm very happy to take any questions and answers via email. My email is jmarti23@nyit.edu. And I'm always happy to talk about this project, and I'm welcoming of anyone who wants to participate and support it. Thank you.